Okay, so this is an extra topic that's not really in the book, but it's a very good topic that we need to talk about, and that is examining what happened during a particular uh, event. So in 2013, Target, the retailer, had a breach. So during November and December, basically Christmas sale period of time, they infected the little point of sales guys that collected credit card numbers and PIN numbers at the checkout. Yeah, they stole credit card and of 110 million customers, and they sold the information. So we're going to dive in and talk about exactly what happened step by step, and maybe even come up with a list of things that they could have done to do a little better. All right, here goes. So Microsoft has this goofy little magazine called Code, and it's basically just a shiny little, back in the day when they had paper magazines. They had an article in there talking about how, Microsoft came in to Target and set them up with a Microsoft only everything. Everything was done in Microsoft, and it was a really cool article about how they streamline operations. And, for example, Coca-Cola could look into the sales data of Target and say, ooh, we need to, increase the amount of Diet Coke going to this store, that kind of stuff. Very cool article talking about this technological thing. But one of the things it did is it listed all of the partners that Target had, like this bank and, this wholesaler and, Coca-Cola, all the rest of the companies that are out there. Listed them all, okay, including a heating and ventilating, HVAC is the term, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. A company, an HVAC company. Now, if I was to pick a target, wrong choice of word, I'll pick a company to attack. I probably wouldn't attack Coca-Cola, and I certainly wouldn't attack a bank. But an HVAC company, it could be some mom and pop operation. Maybe I want to attack that. So their website had a similar listing of all that stuff. And again, the partners who have access could be suppliers and advertisers and banks, typically large companies with dedicated security, but not an HVAC contractor. This is the one that handles their building controls and thermostat settings. It's a pretty cool scenario, building information management, building information stuff, where you can go in and, adjust the humidity levels or find out if how this bearing is getting too hot or this filter needs to be changed. Good stuff. But if I had to pick a company to try to break in, I'd probably pick an HVAC company, not a bank. And certainly not a big vendor like, Coca-Cola. So it's probably, a small company. Probably don't have a dedicated IT and certainly not have a security staff. So they found the HVAC company on the web and got a listing of all of the names and emails of their employees. Okay, cool. And if you can find out an awful lot of information about the employees themselves, you can probably figure out which employee has the password to get into the Target system. Okay? But now this is pure hypothetical. All right? I'm not saying this is what happened, but it makes for a better discussion. So I'm filling in the blanks that I don't have with supposition. So here's the thing. Let's assume that you've identified this one person as the person who is the one who goes into the Target system. And you find out that they're the president of a local, Greyhound or animal rescue or something. And so I'm going to create a social engineering, send it directly to them. Maybe it'll be like a video. And it'll say, I'm not sure if this is animal abuse or not. Would you look at this and tell me your opinion? Now, you've touched their heart. So, dang it. So, they're most likely going to be able to, they're going to open it, okay? They're going to open the attachment. They're going to do some stuff. So it's, again, I'm thinking if you know an awful lot about the person you're attacking, you may be successful at getting them to click on something. So what they had is when they clicked on it, they installed a key logger software on the machine that just recorded all the keystrokes. That's all it did. And then, it would phone home. Again, I'm making this part up because this is part of the story we don't have. Let's say it phoned home once a week. And so maybe it might took a week before the person logged on to Target, but finally they did. And so now I have the name and password that they use to log on to the Target system. Okay, so it might take a while, but eventually, I'm going to have valid login credentials. Okay, so once inside the network, so I'm kind of done with the HVC contract. Now I'm talking about Target. There was no internal separation. Apparently, if you were in, you were in. There was no separation between a secure and non-secure, or HVAC only and all the rest of it. They could see sales. They could see all sorts of stuff that an HVAC contractor doesn't need to see. All right? So they had access to practically everything. They were actually, I think, able to create domain credentials. They would steal the domain password and run through a little rainbow table and come up with the valid things. They were actually able to install a virtual server on the Target's network. In other words, a new server appeared, poof, magically through Hyper-V. And that's the server that they use. And so say when they create the server, they become the administrator and they can turn off antivirus or not install any antivirus at all, right? Then they can load stuff on that server and then do other things, right? Okay, so it's pretty cool. Since they installed it, they had full control. And that became the launch point for what they did. Okay, so what they did is they bought a corrupted version of the operating system for the point of sales little kiosk devices. Okay, so they didn't actually have the smarts. Well, maybe they did of how to do this. They bought this. It cost $10,000. They bought this piece of software that was a corrupted one, and they put it on the virtual machine and then tricked the point of sales guys into saying, you have an update and go here to get it. That's what happened. All of the point of sales overnight all just updated their software, and now they have, a fake version of the operating system. Okay, so this is a good thing, a good discussion to have. They want to do a trial run to see if they were going to get caught. Okay, so you do this like on a holiday weekend, maybe, because the cream of the crop folks, the normal, 9 to 5 people, the security professionals are probably not going to do this. Now, again, this is supposition, but let me just fill in the blanks with things I don't know. Maybe it was the Thanksgiving Day, or maybe it was during the Super Bowl, or, pick a time where people are going to be distracted and are not going to be answering their phones. If I'm in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner at grandma's house 1,000 miles away and my phone rings, I'm going to go, yeah. So they may even have their phones turned off, the IT professionals. And again, second string, what's the caliber of the people that are working in the middle of the night or on a weekend or on a holiday? Is it going to be the cream of the crop? No, probably not. Some junior person who's probably never even seen a security alert, and if they did, they wouldn't know what to do with it. Okay, so a little bit more. They had an detection, basically a burglar alarm, so to speak, an intrusion detection system. So it was monitored by a third party. Now, here's the thing. When you contract with a third party to watch your alarm system, using the alarm system as an analogy, you could say, monitor, and if something goes on, take remedial action. They did not do that. They said, we want you to monitor only, but don't take any action whatsoever. Just contact us. Here's our numbers that you contact. You send me a text if there's a problem. Okay. So the contract was configured so that the company couldn't. So they sent alerts to the IT and the security staff, and nothing happened. They sent it again. Nothing. Like, wow. Okay. They had antivirus software on the servers, and it sent alarms to the IT staff and security staff, and they didn't do anything. So yes, the intrusion detection says someone broke into your system, someone is extracting data. Alarm, alarm, alarm. Nothing. The antivirus said, hey, we saw this fake version of the point of sale software. We know it's a virus. We've seen it before. And alarm, alarm, alarm. Nothing. Okay. So they used FTP to send data to a server in Russia. Okay. And the internal firewall is basically configured to say, anything coming from the trusted inside, we're going to let go. Now, that's kind of naive. Don't assume that everybody on the inside of your network is perfectly honest and all. So that's a bad thing. And they transmit it rather slowly. In other words, kind of off and on during the business day, to avoid suspicion. Not like send a blast of it nonstop. That would raise some suspicions. Like, what the heck is this kind of activity going on? So they kind of just dribbled it off, slowly over time. Okay, and so the firewall noticed the traffic and had an alert. And can you guess what they did? Yep, they did nothing. Okay, so the company they hired out of India was really freaking out because they could see that they were under attack. They could see what they were doing. They could see the malware being installed. They could see the data being sent to Russia, and they were really freaking out, but they could not do anything. And this went on for days. And so basically the president of the company started just calling these people on the phone, anyone who target that would listen to them. And it actually took the Department of Justice, who found out that the stuff was available on the dark web for sale. In other words, after it all happened, and after the credit card numbers were made available for sale, the Department of Justice said, hey, you guys got a problem. And only then did Target say, oh, you mean we should do something? Wow. Okay. Target notified their customers on the 19th. And 110 million credit card numbers, not people, but credit card numbers with pins, went on sale from November 27th to December 18th. That's a long time. And I think it's hilarious that even some of the dark web people had a money-back guarantee that these were good credit cards. I mean, isn't that just crazy? Ended up with a $118 million settlement. They estimated they probably lost about $200 million in revenue, and stock prices fell immediately. So what are we talking about? So let's talk about the things that went wrong. Well, the number one thing that went wrong is don't tell people who has access. That would be one I would put on the list. The other one might be, before I give you credentials to my system, you're going to have to take some training. It might be something like, go get Security Plus from, CompTIA before I give you an account. Something that says you're a competent person. And then, if you're going to hire people to listen for alarms, then for God's sake, pay attention. Okay? Now, I would assume, again, I don't have, this is part of the story that's missing. I assume their chief of their security got fired, right? I mean, I would just assume that would be the case, because there was complete incompetence. When you get alarms coming in, you're supposed to do something, okay? And don't have so that you have partitions in your system so that not everyone can do everything, right? The whole concept of least privilege. And don't configure your firewall to just assume that everybody on the inside is good and therefore I don't have to deal with it. That's a dumb idea. There's a couple more, but those are kind of the major ones in this story that kind of deserves a little bit of talk. Okay, we've got to the end of this, and I'll see you guys again in the next video.